Good evening, all of you. Welcome to the 79th edition with our dear friend uh, in the hot seat. Now, today's topic is about how we talk about psychiatry, the language that we should understand the psychiatry in. So we start to actually know what is actually happening in brain. So we have chosen the topic of resilience, how brain sees resilience, what is actually happening. Next slide, please. So let me hand over the session to Professor Dr. Tufan Pati sir. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Alim. And I have the pleasure to be with you. And this is 79th edition. We have a very profound speaker, Dr. Bhaskar, who will be speaking on the biological aspects of resilience as far as cerebral functions is concerned. I welcome to this meeting, as always, Dr. Alim Siddiqui, the Treasurer of Indian Psychiatric Society, and Dr. Amrit Patajoshi, is a member of Indian Psychiatric Society. They are vibrant, active, brilliant moderators of Thursday Musings till date, and will be there for the time to come. I'm skipping over the introduction because there's so much well known that don't need an introduction. May I have these slides for the chairpersons, please? Dr. Sandeep Goyal. Dr. Sandeep Kumar Goyal is currently working as a consultant psychiatrist at IPS at SPS Hospitals, Ludhiana. Previously, he was professor and head of the CMC at Ludhiana. He is immediate past president of Indian Psychiatric Society, North Zone, and he has edited a multi-author psychiatry book for undergraduate medical students, that is Essential Psychiatry. Welcome, Dr. Goyal. Welcome to our midst. And our next chairperson is Dr. Somsekhar Biswal, young, vibrant also. He is the General Secretary of IPS Karnataka chapter. He is the President Psychiatrist Guild of North Karnataka. He is Executive Committee member of IPS South Zonal Branch, member of Deccan Psychiatric Association, member, former Secretary of Koppal Branch and former EC member of State Branch of Karnataka, Government Medical Officers Association, KGMOA, former member of Karnataka State Mental Health Authority. Areas of interest, community psychiatry and forensic psychiatry. He has got many awards and appreciations from Government of Karnataka and many non-governmental organizations for his community health services. Welcome, Dr. Biswal. Welcome, Dr. Goyal. Now the meeting is over to you, to the chairpersons. Please take over and carry on.
Dr. Goyal.
Good evening to all. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
शेयरिंग बंद कर दीजिए. जब स्पीकर का सीडी बोलने के लिए आएगा तो उसको शेयर करना.
First of all, I want to thank the audience, Dr. Tufan Pati sir, Dr. Alim Siddiqui, and Dr. Amrit for giving me second opportunity. Last time I could not join as I had COVID infection. And as all of us know, today's CME is how brain sees resilience. And speaker is none other than Dr. Bhaskar Mukherjee. He is strong proponent of biological psychiatry. And I'm sure we will learn a lot of things about resilience. All of us exhibit a remarkable degree of resilience in the face of extreme stress, with most resisting the development of neuropsychiatric disorders. In humans, most published work focuses on correlative neuroendocrine markers that are associated with a resilient phenotype. There is a lot of literature in rodents identifying behavioral, neural, molecular, and hormonal basis of resilience. And I'm sure we will learn a lot of new things. Over to Dr. Somsekhar.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. At the outset, I thank Dr. Alim Siddiqui sir, Dr. Tufan Pati sir, and Dr. Amrit for giving me an opportunity to chair this session. It is as my co-chairperson, Dr. Sandeep has mentioned about the today's topic. I would like to introduce today's the presenter. Dr. Bhaskar Mukherjee. It is very interesting to know about Dr. Bhaskar Mukherjee's description. When you read about the description, it's so beautifully written. The way it is written, it is a creativity it shows, which is written with so much of compassion, competitiveness, connectedness, caring, and moral compassion and confidence. The way it is written, I'm a student of psychiatry, the medical discipline dealing with full working and dysfunction of the brain. The molecular biology where I feel most comfortable, and for me, psychiatry is the molecular psychiatry. All these days, it was known that psychiatry doesn't have a scientific basis when I was studying in the undergraduate level. People like Dr. Bhaskar Mukherjee found that when even they had a conflict when he entered in MBBS in 1997 from Neil Ratan Srikar Medical College, he completed. Then when he joined for his MD course in 2004 from University College of Medicines. So who is passionate about the brain? So that and is functioning. And psychiatry has become a less of medical scientific discipline and more of a humanitarian branch. So which has made us some sparkled his brain and thought and his inclination and attitudes towards the creativity. As Buddha was searched the truth, meaning of truth, he went in that direction. Dr. Mukherjee went in the search of physiological, pathological, and molecular basis for the psychological disorders. He chosen the way where he can make such a research. So he such a passionate he is. He based on this molecular basis, he treat his patients both in pharmacological as well as psychosocial interventions about the most of the psychiatric disorders. So he's a consultant in many hospitals in and around Calcutta. So to name few, he is in Sri Aurobindo Seva Kendra. So he also works in ILS Hospital, Antara, Sanjeevani Hospital, and he was faculty from the at the West Bengal Medical Education Services, also Malda Medical College for a few years he was there and continues to do that. And the way it is written, his biodata itself create a resilience pathways in the brain, especially the prefrontal cortex and nucleus accumbens and amygdala, which creates the resilience. Resilience as American Psychiatric Association has defined 7 C characters. So it creativity, connectedness, caring. So let us learn more about how this resilience itself makes changes in the brain. So I welcome Dr. Bhaskar Mukherjee for this beautiful evening. So over to Dr. Bhaskar Mukherjee to we'll learn a lot from him, sir. Over to Dr. Mukherjee, sir.
Hello, everyone. So finally, in its later edition, musing has finally incorporated me. A tough fight and ultimately Ali Mom. Anyway, the thing is, today we are going to talk about the most abused word in psychiatry. Every person who joins psychiatry, psychology, sociology, philosophy, they use resilience in various forms. This is a word which has lost its original meaning, that is original biological meaning. Resilience biologically should be something that is a combination of mechanism which makes an animal adaptable to a particular environment, and resilience is that state of biological function that should make an animal being survivable in a particular environment. Standing there, this psychological, philosophical, sociological expansion of resilience has robbed medical world of a precise and nuanced group of mechanisms which brain does to make an animal survive. So for today, we are going back towards the biological front. The precise biological areas of resilience, what psychiatry does, and I can guarantee you after these two lectures, today I am going to talk about basic science of these things, and next lecture would be how these things create various psychiatric symptoms when they are destabilized. And I can guarantee that after these two lectures, you would understand brain in a different way. You might or might not like that because the traditional teaching is vastly different from this. But let's start seeing brain from a new point of view. And my request would be during these lectures, you can interrupt me anytime you want. Just give a hand sign and ask me question. But don't remember DSM, ICD, and all the psychiatric nomenclatures. Because at the end of the day, brain is a biological organ and brain has never learned sociology, psychology, or philosophy. Brain works on biological principle, and in biological principle, DSM, ICD, and so far the jargons that dominate psychiatry doesn't exist. With this somewhat lengthy preface, I am going to my presentation. I gave this presentation name as Brain, Body and the Interface and the Real Place of Psychiatry amongst medical specialty, because that is ultimately the whole expansion of resiliences. Resilience is controlled by brain, and this is where the real strength and real part of psychiatry remains. So when we think about this, we have to tackle this discussion in various steps. First could be evolutionary biology of brain and homeostasis. Second would be basics of stress response system of brain and body. Then there will be what happens physiologically when brain faces stress. Then we will talk about pathological expressions, how psychotropics work here, and then we would try to sum up. A very close Gujarati psychiatrist whom I call uncle, he insists on bullet points. So I would give bullet points after these two lectures. So first, we have to think about evolutionary biology of brain and homeostasis. What is the need of brain in an animal? Why evolution gave us a 3-pound blob of fat and water inside the most secure cage of our body?
Bhaskar, do you want to show the PPTs or abhi baad mein karenge?
PPT
It is not running.
Oh shit! I forgot to share my screen.
You can share now. No problem.
अभी कर दो.
अभी कर दे रहा हूँ मैं. एक्चुअली बात करते करते चला गया. हाँ,
Just run through the initial slides. Yeah.
अभी आ रहा है ना?
हाँ जी. Full screen.
फुल स्क्रीन करता हूँ. So
Full screen नहीं हुआ बस.
नहीं हुआ? मेरा तो हो रहा है.
हाँ आ गया. Full screen आ गया. अभी आ गया.
हाँ, बीच में एक्चुअली शायद जूम का कोई मैलफंक्शन रहा. Evolutionary biology of brain and homeostasis. This would be the first topic we should talk about, because let's ask the question why we have a 3-pound blob of fat inside the most secure prison in body, that is skull covering brain. And if you think some more, you would find out that this 3-pound blob of fat and some of its extension, they are the only irreplaceable part of our body. Means if today someone loses one hand, we can transplant a whole hand. If today someone loses kidney or heart or liver, we can transplant each of them. What we cannot transplant? Brain.
Is the
or
slide
eyes.
moving?
Hmm?
Slide is moving because
No, slide move नहीं कर रहा है, मैं भी बात कर रहा हूँ उसमें. You told me okay, make them understand, so I'm explaining. Yeah. So what we cannot replace in human being is human being or any animal being. This 3-pound blob of tissue known as brain, 2 eyes protruding from brain, spinal cords, which is extension of brain, and nerve neck, which is projecting towards body. Everything else in body is replaceable. In fact, we can say that this brain, eye, spinal cord, and nerve neck is the real body of any animal. Rest of the thing are just a muscular and osseous exoskeleton that carries the animal and protects them. So there must be an evolutionary way that makes animal body like this. That evolutionary way can be explained by homeostasis. I know that all of you remember homeostasis, but still I would give a small introduction. Homeostasis, by definition, is any self-regulating process by which biological systems tend to maintain stability while adjusting to conditions that are optimal for survival. If homeostasis is successful, life continues. If homeostasis is unsuccessful, disaster or death occurs. The stability attained is actually a dynamic equilibrium in which continuous changes occur, yet relatively uniform conditions prevail. This is the textbook definition of homeostasis. Now let me explain in a more observable way. Let's talk about a sub-Saharan lion. The lion lives in sub-Saharan Africa. If we take a lion and place that lion in tundra, that lion would die in a matter of minutes because its brain is not capable of changing its body parameter and changing its abilities fast enough to maintain its survivability. So this is a homeostatic challenge that the lion can never actually fight. Okay, Rima is raising her hand. Rima, unmute yourself and you can ask if you want to ask something.
So slides are not moving.
So I am not actually.
Yes. Okay, sir. Okay.
So this is the concept of homeostasis and I am explaining the homeostasis. Okay. So I saw Rima raising her hand anyway. The thing is, then if we take a sub-Saharan human being who lives in same savanna environment like a lion and transport that human being to tundra, what would happen? The human being would try to build a shelter, would try to light a fire, would try to gather various foods and other things, and would ultimately its body and its habit would make it survive. And if it dies, it would take at least few days to weeks. So that homeostatic adjustment is innate nature of human being, and that adjustment is what made human being apex predator of Earth ecosystem, because this is the only human brain which has this range of adaptive function. This adaptability can also be called resilience. Actually, this was the original resilience before psychology, sociology, and every other humanities diluted. Anyway, so how these things are achieved, this would be the topic of today's discussion. Now, in monocellular organism, attaining homeostasis is very easy. They have some cell surface receptor which would actually get various environmental inputs, and then those inputs would be transported towards to nucleus via various cell signaling system, and then nucleus would have various changes in its conformation and its protein production, which would ultimately cause the organism to generate a separate set of signaling, which would go to again cell surface and to flagella and cell membrane, and then cell membrane would either move away from external environment or get some food or get some fluid to change the hydromineral balance and other. So this results in almost instantaneous management of various homeostatic balance. In multicellular organism, that process is not easy because the receptor, the effectors, the control centers of various cells could clash with each other. For example, let's say hydromineral balance is impaired. The animal needs to take some water and mineral. At the same time, the animal needs to feed. Now, this process has to be carried out almost instantaneously, but the cell-to-cell transmission speed is not fast enough. So, what evolution did? Evolution started creating a group of cells which are dedicated information carriers, and they started carrying information from one end of body to another. This is origin of initial nervous system. These cells are nerve cells, and their arrangement is the first primitive nervous system. So, as we can understand, the initial system would be very primitive and simple. It would be a nerve net, and that net would be connecting each part of animal's body with other. And this picture would show that. This is the first origin of nervous system in Hydra. There it is nerve net. Later, various homeostatic subsystem. Homeostatic subsystem means homeostasis has various components: energy component, hydromineral balance component, pH component, as well as temperature component.
We are seeing the title slide only.
Oh God, it's not moving. You are seeing only title slide.
Yeah, only one slide.
Now,
No, also, sir.
huh? Oh God, let me start again.
Last time also same thing happened, no?
No, now
It is starting.
Ah,
Yes. अभी ठीक है. Plan of discussion is coming up.
कौन कुछ कितना लोग देखा
Plan of discussion is visible. Evolutionary biology of brain. Homeostasis.
इंटरव्यू पढ़ने आता है.
वो आई चेकअप कर रहा था मैं.
Sir, now they are moving. You can keep moving.
Bhaskar, the slides are moving, but you are on mute mode.
Okay. So homeostasis, I talked about homeostasis in monocellular organism.
Yes.
Then homeostasis in multicellular organism would be a bit different because cell to cell transmission is slow normally. And when instantaneous adjustment is needed, just cell to cell transmission is not sufficient. That's why there was need of a specialized information carrying cell, and this was the origin of nerve cell. And these nerve cells joined together to form a primitive nerve net. This was the first origin of nervous system. Then what happened is this nerve net developed dedicated subsystems of homeostatic maintenance. Means a subsystem which controls temperature only, an effector arm, a central temperature control, and an effector arm. Similarly, pH balance, another nerve loop. Then energy metabolism, another nerve loop. Then hydromineral actually metabolism, another nerve net. And ultimately, there would become multiple fully formed nerve loops which would control various aspects of homeostasis. This is the stage where octopuses are, or the cephalopods, and they have peripherally distributed nervous ganglions. But this is enough till we are at the stage of only environment and a single animal. Whenever there is formation of a layer of society interaction or a layer of inter-animal interaction, then this system is not enough, because when an animal communicates with other animal through voice, through gestures, or through various other body motions, they need to be read, and the brain need to adjust to those messages very rapidly. And for that, these separate homeostatic centers has to work in sync, and so they need to come closer. This was the reason evolution next started making the separate nerve systems come together and form a single collaboration of various homeostatic centers. This is the primary primitive brain, and unsurprisingly, it is seen in those animals in whom there is primitive society, be it insect, be it honeybee, be it other thing. Then, as the layer of social environment gets more complex, the interaction between these various homeostatic centers grew more complex, and their interactions started taking more place than their individual loops. This is the origin of neocortex, and later, as the animal structure and the societal structure and the environmental structure became more and more complex, the neocortex become more and more complex, and ultimately, at the end of that evolution process, we are there who has 6-layer neocortex. We are one of those first animals who has 6-layer neocortex. Rest of the animal actually has 3 layer, 2 layer, or 4 layer neocortex. So this is the evolutionary understanding of evolution of homeostasis, resilience, and brain, which became slowly more and more complex. If we make that a pictorial diagram, then homeostasis becomes the process of maintaining balance between external environment and internal environment. Brain controls this homeostasis, as we know by now, by so far discussion. This process of brain controlling homeostasis has different name. For the purpose of this discussion, we would name it allostasis. Yes, allostasis is a term which has various debatable and various expanded meaning. But for the discussion of today and next week, it would be allostasis means all those mechanisms through which brain control homeostatic balance and maintain homeostatic balance. So allostasis by its component wise has few components. Brain controls the whole body through these components. One of them is autonomic nervous system. We all know that autonomic nervous system is one of the major nervous system of body. Then comes neuroendocrine system. Brain is the central point of neuroendocrine system. Then come immune systems. I have talked about systems because immune system is not a single entity. There is an innate immune system, there is adaptive immune system, there is coagulation system, which all these immune system together can be called as thromboinflammatory system. And brain is the central point of this system. Then there is other regulatory nervous system, which can be cortical regulatory nervous system, subcortical, spinal, or peripheral nervous system. So this is the basic foundation on which our next discussions would proceed, because I actually request you to remember this, because this would give you understanding to decipher the next things. So by so far discussion, you can understand that there is a personalized functional range of brain's micromanagement to control homeostasis. And within that range, different areas of brain doesn't have to exert itself to control the body homeostasis while performing normal day-to-day life activity. Means, let's say I am sleeping. I woke up from sleep, I do my regular cleaning work, then I take my breakfast, I go to my chamber. This is my normal daily activity. And for it, my brain is habituated enough so that this work doesn't cause information overload in my brain. If these work start causing information overload in my brain, then my brain is losing its capability to control my homeostatic system. So now what happens when there is a demand on brain to perform outside this personalized functional range to manage some disturbances in homeostasis? This is stress. In psychiatry, every student is asked, every student means every PGT is actually asked to find stressor, to find what is the stress. And they are bewildered because they don't know stress biologically. The biological definition of stress is this. It is a demand on brain which makes brain work outside its personalized functional range. And this is actually a group of information that brain needs to handle to make body homeostasis normal. So this gives us not only resilience, biological definition of resilience, This also gives us biological definition of stress. Stress is just an information overload to brain, which happens when brain is required to work outside is its normal personalized range. Either this demand is placed by internal environment like fever or infection or diabetes or other thing, or external environment, means either some social environmental change or physical environmental change. So when brain faces stress, there are a sequence of events that happen at gross molecular and gross physiological level. The neural connections between various brain areas start working excessively to carry the increased information load. Because at the end of the day, any functional adjustment means brain has to carry more information, and any homeostatic load for brain is brain has to carry more information, because brain is an information carrying organ. So that leads to hyperactivity of various neuronal cell bodies. The main areas responsible for that specific demand works more, but the rest of the brain areas would also contribute, because brain, like every other organ, doesn't work alone. Let's say the person is thirsty, so the thirst center would be more activated, but all the other centers, they would also contribute to the management of this information crisis. So this hyperactivation of neural cells need energy to maintain the action. First, there would be high rate of synaptic transmission. There would be high rate of synaptic activity. This activity would in turn cause production of various things inside the neuronal body and synapse. This production is mostly production of proteins, and so this is known as electrical transcriptomic coupling or coupling. It can be called electrical transcriptomic coupling or electrical protein production, whatever. But ultimately, this would cause brain to produce more protein at first synaptic level, then it is spread to cell body. Now, to produce this protein, brain needs energy. That energy would come from all the brain's mitochondria. Now, mitochondria are going to produce the energy through oxidative phosphorylation, and that would cause production of reactive oxygen species, as well as there would be increased glucose demand and other things. This would also result in increased protein recycling. If we picture this in a way, this would be better, because now we are going into slightly more advanced than this. So this is a picture I have made. There is first increased homeostatic load, which means high information carrying load. So there will be hyperactivation of various brain areas which are handling the load. There would be increased mitochondrial oxidative phosphorylation and redox stress on cell and cellular stress. There would also be increased protein recycling and ER stress, and all this cellular stress would be sensed by node-like receptor and resultant activation. There will be resultant activation of BMP. Now, this ER stress and increased protein recycling is what connects our brain stress cycle with neurodegenerative disorders, because this in neurodegenerative disorder there is increased ER stress, and ultimately there is misfolding of protein, there is failure of destruction of misfolded protein, and ultimately there are a group of destabilization which causes brain cell to go into apoptosis and die. So this stress pathway is also those pathways which is one of the pathogenesis cause of neurodegenerative disorders. Now let's go to next step. When there is cellular stress sensing by node-like receptor 3 and resultant activation of DMP pathway, this causes activation of brain's microglia. Now we all know brain's microglia is the primary immune system cell of brain. Now immune system, we have to understand that it is like a gardener. It actually pro-growth system. It doesn't only fight with infection. It actually increases growth of any organ. It maintains any organ. It gives any organ its shape and other. So whenever there is pro-inflammatory action, that action is also pro-growth action. Now, when microglia that's way is brain's primary growth promoting cell. Now, when there is activation of microglia by toll-like receptor as a result of DMP pathway activation, microglia would change shape. Normally, microglia stay in resting state, which is known as M0. From M0, it would go into M1. M1 is pro-inflammatory configuration of microglia. M2, there is also another form, M2, which is immunoregulatory, but I am not going into M2 today. So when there is M1 formation of microglia, it would cause various changes in brain. First, it would cause activation of node-like receptor 3 inflammasome in endothelial cell. Node-like receptor 3 inflammasome is the propagator of inflammation in our body. And as I already made clear in this lecture, that inflammation is also growth. So it is also main growth promotion and main growth propagation module in various cells. Now, M1 microglia causes activation of this NLRP3 inflammasome in endothelial cells of brain vasculature. Now, also this M1 microglia causes activation of astrocyte. Astrocyte also has A0, A1, and A2 form. A0 is a resin. When there is change into A1, the astrocyte food processes would get activated, and astrocytes, if you remember, astrocyte food processes are those things which causes blood-brain barrier, along with the wall of various blood vessels of brain. So astrocyte food processes, when they get activated, there is change in blood-brain barrier formation, and the food processes would start secretion of various vasoactive peptides. One of those vasoactive peptides are calcium gene-related peptides, CGRP. Other are various bradykinins and other kinins. There would also be VIP and other nerve growth factors and these things. These two, NLRP inflammation activation and active astrocyte activation, would cause dilatation of brain blood vessels in response to increased brain metabolic need. This is known as neurovascular coupling. If you people remember, last 2 years ago, means in early 2020, a study was published in Nature that neurovascular coupling is absent in autism and various neurodevelopmental disorders. So neurovascular coupling is one of those things that connects this normal stress pathway with abnormal reactions like autistic symptom, like schizophrenic symptom, because schizophrenia doesn't exist. For purpose of this lecture, we are not thinking about imaginary diagnosis of ICD-10. For us, schizophrenia doesn't exist. What exists is chronic psychosis And if you see the literature base, you find neurovascular coupling is absent in chronic psychosis too. So chronic neurovascular coupling is one of the keywords that would find you repeatedly. Then microglial activation would also lead to various other things. Activated microglia would cause modification of extracellular matrix and would cause limited dissolution of perineuron. Now, most of you are not really familiar with perineural net. Perineural net is condensation of extracellular matrix around nerve cells so that they don't get affected by toxins easily, number one. Number two, so that they don't form aberrant synapses as and when the stimulation happens. So this is the two function of perineural. And due to perineural net, we have such a huge and fast nervous system. So whenever there is activation of microglia, the perineural net would start dissolution. And neuronal ability to develop new synapses would be restored in those areas which are now working excessively. Now, microglia do another thing. They would cause, activated microglia would cause activation of neuronal proliferation zone. Previously, when I was a student of first year MBBS, let's say that was 1997, the most important neurological funda was brain doesn't produce new cell, neurons don't divide, neurons once originate in intrauterine life and then they die. There can be no replacement and other. But since 2020 and more importantly after 2010, we have definitive evidence that neurons divide, neurons are replaced, and there are neurogenesis in adult, which is very much active. These neural proliferative zones are situated in subventricular area. These neural proliferative zones are situated in hippocampus. Even you can understand by seeing MRI of a chronic epileptic patient or chronic neurovascular disease patient that they have a whitening of base of both the ventricle as well as the hippocampus. This whitening is death of this neuroproliferative zone, neural proliferative zone, and this whitening signifies that their neural proliferative zone are not active and their brain is going to degeneration. So this way, normal stress cycle is giving indications towards various cardiogenesis process. Anyway, so normally neuronal proliferative zone contains various stem cells. Some of them are oligopotent, some of them are monopotent. Now, these cells are kicked alive by microglia, or rather, they are stimulated by microglia via notch pathway, Jagged notch pathway, and they start division and produce neurogenesis and gliogenesis. This new neuronal and glial cell, they start then migration to the zone of hyperactivity. This migration is both active and passive neuronal migration. Now let me give you another interesting information. Those of us who were reading various theories of schizophrenia in 2014-15, we have come across a theory that complement C4G is associated with psychosis and one of the causes of schizophrenia. Now, this neuronal migration actually connects those complement pathway abnormality with chronic psychosis and autism. because both of these disorders have neuronal migration disorder, and complement pathways, specifically complement C4 and its various variants, are one of those chemoattractant which causes this migration. So again, migration abnormality is cause of various psychiatric symptoms. Now this, after migration, the new neuronal cell settle down in zone of hyperactivity, and there will be formation of synapses in between the new cells, and old cells, and in between the old cells. And ultimately, there will be formation of a lot of synapses. This synaptogenesis would lead to synaptic remodeling. And synaptic remodeling, most are of various types. I would mention only 2 types because you don't need to know all these things now. I don't want to overload your circuits. One is long-term depression, one is long-term potencies. In long-term potencies, long-term potencies happens in those circuits or those synaptic connections where increased number of transmission neurotransmitter is happening. There will be thickening of action, there will be less number of nodes of ganglia so that the electrical impulse can go fast, as well as there will be more number of dendrites in those synapses. The dendritic metabolism would go more, there will be more protein formation in those dendrites, as well as the neurotransmitter recycling, means endovascular, the docking of vesicles and release, as well as the reuptake becomes more. And ultimately, this process has a role known as long-term potentiation of that synapse. Now, those synapses which are transmitting less and less information and less synaptic activation is happening, there will be long-term depression. The action would become very slender. There will be more nodes of NVR. There will be less number of dendrites. The dendrites would go into active pruning, means they will be cut away by immune system, and this is known as long-term depression. These processes ultimately leads to various brain changes, which is known as neuroplasticity, and there will be cerebral adaptation to homeostatic load. This is purely brain level of action of resilience. Cerebral adaptation of homeostatic load is what is resilience, and that is a purely biological process. You cannot do this by psychology or sociology or any other. So this makes us come to those pathologies which can affect this part. But first, my question would be to all the 221 participants. Have you understood this process? Because this is psychiatry. This is the foundation of psychiatry. If you understand this process, you can never miss any patient. You can never miss expression of any symptoms, and you can never go back to the old way of not seeing psychiatry as a science. Because this part is what makes psychiatry a top branch of medical science. So anyone who has not understood any of this process should ask me, unmute themselves and ask me. Please unmute yourself and ask if you have anything to ask, because afterwards we would go into very small part of lecture is left, and I would go into their last. But first, start asking me. Dr. Dusadram has asked, is this mechanism specific to resilience? No, this is resilience. This mechanism is resilience. if brain is performing this mechanism perfectly, then the brain is resilient enough to handle it. When this mechanism is not going on in brain, either at one level or multiple level, then there is formation of neurological and psychiatric disease, not before that. So there is another question, just a minute. Someone has asked me, Dr. Devendra Kumar Visne, he has written a large, just a minute. He has written okay, where is his question? I cannot find his question. What am I going back forward? Alim, please help me.
Yeah, he wants to ask, what is the extent in this ability limited to those environments that have shaped the individuals, or can it be more flexible? So basically, can it be flexible? Then
Now,
yeah.
yes. So you have to understand that environmental input is something very gross. Let's say, I will give you understanding. Let's take a human being. That human being is being insulted by his or her relative. One change in social environment. Then that same human being is deprived of food when he or she is hungry. Another social environment malfunction. That same human being is facing intolerable heat or cold. Another physical environment. Now, that same human being is suffering from an infection. All the signaling that would reach the brain to inform the brain that there are some changes in either internal or external environment would not be specific enough to tell the brain that someone has threatened this person, or someone has deprived this person of some basic need, or this person has faced some unbearable environmental condition, or there is an infection in the body. The environmental responses are specific till the point of contact. After that, they are transmitted into various neurochemical reaction, various body biochemical reaction. Those body biochemical reaction would change various RNAs and various editor RNAs, various messenger and microRNAs, various circular RNAs, and various non-coding RNA. Those non-coding RNA in turn would go and change the cell environment. So cell environment change or brain environment change for all these different external environmental changes would be same. So brain would not bother whether it has been insulted by someone or whether it has been deprived of some necessity. For brain, a threat is a threat. Threat would only be differentiated by degree of the danger it poses. Threat would not be classified by what the society feel or what the other human being or other observers feel that this should be more dangerous or this should not be more dangerous. For brain, it has own criteria. So environmental shaping of an organism is a very big term. It is actually more in the realm of psychology and sociology than biology. But for biology, for brain simplifies everything, and all those threat signals are changed into whether this is immediately threatful or whether this is threatful in the long term or whether this is going to be threatful towards my basic survival or I can do. And
So
depending
basically,
on
yeah, you want to say that stress is basically then reduced to microsignals, in the molecular pathways,
Yes.
and bahar se, whatever it is coming, it is the same. The second part was, when in the life does the brain develop this capacity to adapt, to be flexible?
As soon as brain is formed, intrauterine life.
So it starts intrauterine.
As soon as the first nopopod is formed, or even before that, when the neural ectoderm is formed, actually, as soon as the single zygote is formed, this ability is formed inside you, because zygote would also maintain its homeostatic equilibrium. You have to understand that we are nothing but a gigantic hive of trillions and trillions of cells, well, probably quadrillion cells. A human being has probably few quadrillion cells, and we are just a hive cluster. Each cell of this hive cluster has its own resilience, and when they come together in a hive cluster, that hive cluster has its own resilience.
So can this group
Yes.
of trillion cells, that is a person, be molded? Can he learn the flexibility when there have been early life problems?
Learning of flexibility would be dependent on two things. Number one, how much adaptive learning the brain is genetically capable of. Learning is a genetic reaction. Not all human beings learn the same. And the learning genetics is a very fascinating subject. I am not going into that today, but learning is a genetic process. So the genetic process would have its own limitation. This is number one. Number two, how much there is innate learning. What we call normal developmental parameters are actually our attainment of various innate learning parameters. One human child doesn't learn to walk. It just walks at some point of time. And if it doesn't work, there is delay of development. This is one innate learning that we have learned. A human child doesn't need to be taught to speak. It speaks. The language needs to be taught. So innate learning is one thing that would determine how much the human being is trainable. Number two is adaptive learning. Number three is the human being's capacity to perceive the environment. For example, if there is cell migration problem, the circuit which should be connected to some other areas are connecting to some other areas, and this person would have problem in perceiving the environment and would have problem in judging and learning from their action and environment. So these three are the factors which will determine how much a human being can be trained or whether a human being is trainable or not.
There is a question by Dr. Rama.
No, there is another question we missed. Before Rama.
There are many questions. Many questions.
There are many questions. Once you finish your point, I think we will go. Maybe better if you go for the questions.
Okay. So one is, I would just give Rama.
You can what I'm saying, you can finish and then we take up the questions.
It will be better.
But I would like to answer Rama. This
Sure.
is the general schema. Yes, this is the general schema. What I am talking about is general schema. I am giving you the general schema of how brain works. So there will be individual variation. In my first description, I have given that brain works in an individual functional range. Individual, not the individual. So there has to be variation within individual that is determined by genetic profile, epigenetic profile, and that can be discussed in next day's discussion. So now we are going to the last discussion of today. Cerebral pathology and expression of the cerebral pathology which causes change in the system. So what are cerebral pathologies that can disrupt this integrate resilience or homeostatic control system of brain. Essentially, we can say that this is the brain's main function, and this function extends far beyond what we can imagine. Let's say a person is having AMI. How much the AMI would damage the heart would depend on intrinsic cardiac nervous system and brain's interaction. The heart has its intrinsic cardiac nervous system that controls everything of heart, that interact with brain in multiple ways. Neuroendocrinological loop, through immune loop, through direct nervous system loop. And so through these loop, brain actually can control how much the cardiac intrinsic nervous system would allow the heart to become damaged. A person is having various allergic reactions. Through various brain parameters, a brain can control how much a person would develop allergic reaction to various things. If you think logically, you find out that a brain which is very much vulnerable to allergens during birth or early childhood would later learn to develop tolerance towards various allergens, and ultimately that is why most allergic asthma of childhood would later become non-asthmatic, because brain, skin and immune system and mucous membrane, these four components of our integrate neural loop, has learned to develop tolerance towards various allergic stimuli. So when you can understand this system, you would find the extensions of this system are there throughout this, and every organ has a huge contribution from this system. That is why cardiology has a large amount of psychiatry, gastroenterology has almost full amount of psychiatry, nephrology has a large amount of psychiatry, pulmonology has a large amount of psychiatry, and general medicine has a huge amount of psychiatry, because this system extends to those areas which we were not aware about. So what are the things that would affect these functions? That was a question of Rima. Oh, I forgot her name. Sorry, don't mind. I forget things. Anyway, so what are the conditions that would affect this function and to produce change in cerebral stress adaptability or resilience? So far, what we saw should enable us to understand that these conditions are all genetic causes with epigenetic modification. So the genetic group of diseases affecting brain and causing these dysfunctions are group of genetic conditions affecting neural cell production, maturation, function, aging, and death. Group of genetic conditions affecting synaptic development, function, and remodeling. Group of genetic conditions affecting cerebral immune and coagulation system. Group of genetic conditions affecting development, function, and remodeling of neurovascular system. Group of genetic conditions affecting development, function, and remodeling of extracellular matrix. Group of genetic conditions affecting cerebral barriers like blood-brain barrier, blood CSF barrier, brain CSF barrier, and cerebral drainage system like lymphatic system and CS. So you see, these are the real diseases of psychiatry. And each group, be it A or be it F, has minimum few thousand of diseases inside. these are the diseases we are treating through our drugs, and neurologists are treating through our drugs, because these diseases don't understand that human being has divided brain science into two streams and have doctors of two streams. For them, this brain is brain, and so their manifestations will be neurological and psychiatric, or psychiatric and neurological. There would never be pure neurological manifestation or pure psychiatric manifestation. And these are the diseases we should be thinking about.
Bhaskar, I think we should pause now and take questions.
Yes. So this would be today's lecture. Next day would be what happens when the various mutations will have been affected, followed by our exploration and delineation of pathophysiology of every psychiatric symptom. In next lecture, I am hoping to give you pathophysiology of each of the psychiatric symptoms that we treat, be it psychosis, be it mania, be it depression, be it anxiety, be it OCD. And with that, I am ending today's lecture.
Thank you, Bhaskar.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Bhaskar, for a wonderful presentation. Now, can I ask Dr. Amit to go for questions?
Yeah. There's an interesting question. Can I take it?
Yes, we should take everything.
So Dr. Paramveer asked the question, can resilience be increased, improved by any non-pharmacological method?
Yes.
Or
Why
is it a false claim by the Amrit and Alim school of thought?
not? Resilience increase means you are increasing brain's capacity to handle information load. So first there has to be a basic primer, means there should be a fertile ground. The brain should not contain any impairment in learning genetics. The brain should not contain any impairment in innate learning genetics. And the brain should not contain any impairment in brain's ability to judge and understand the external environment. If these three conditions are fulfilled, then depending on various environmental input and various interpersonal input, a group of people can be made to learn to increase their resilience. But the point would be their resilience increase cannot be hugely different than what their biologically determined resilience is. It can change. They can be trained to increase it 4%, 5%, but increasing it to 50% or 100%, probably we are not there. In future, we will be able to do it, provided we start molding the human brain from conception. But we neither have the ethical clearance nor have the actual intention to do it at this moment, because we don't know how many things can go wrong.
So Bhaskar, you basically want to say that the stress is leading to neuroinflammation.
Yes, every change in.
So be it an COVID infection, be it a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law fighting, or be it the death in a family.
Or be it Bhaskar bullying you.
हेलो क्या हुआ फ्रीज हो गया क्या
नहीं आ रहा है
नेटवर्क इशू आई थिंक भास्कर साइड से
ये
नहीं क्या हो हाँ नेटवर्क इशू अभी ठीक है
So at molecular level, every stress is same, only the degree is different. That is,
Yes.
you said?
Yes.
Achha, there was a question of neurovascular coupling. Can you give a brief overview again? Because
Ah,
most of us are trying to digest what you have put on the plate. So please be patient with us.
yes, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं, पूछते जाओ, पूछो, मुझे पूछना पसंद है। हाँ,
ठीक है, we have some questions for you, don't worry.
हाँ, neurovascular coupling is actually a fancy term. कुछ नहीं, ब्रेन का metabolic demand increase हो रहा है, and in response to that, through various ways, brain is increasing its own blood supply. Brain's blood supply is tightly regulated by a lot of mechanisms. When brain's metabolic demand increases, then a lot of mechanism brain increases that blood. The blood supply is increased via number one. मैंने सब mechanism यहाँ पे नहीं दिखाया because I don't want you to get overwhelmed. So first is inflammasome pathway that would increase brain blood supply. Number two, activated astrocyte and blood-brain barrier change that would increase brain blood supply. Then number three would be various redox signaling pathway. Redox signals, they themselves are neurotransmitters. This we came to know about 5 years ago. All the activated reactive oxygen species, they are themselves neurotransmitters, and those neurotransmission has a role of increasing brain blood supply via those areas where blood-brain barrier is decreased, means hypothalamus, means the circumventricular organ. Through their brain's blood-brain barrier, brain's blood supply. Also, there is neuroendocrine changes. For example, hypothalamus excite होगा, उसके बाद through various hypothalamic releasing hormones, it will change the brain's blood supply. So there are various ways, but ultimately, whenever there is increased metabolic need in brain, the brain's blood supply will increase. That is neurovascular coupling.
Yeah. Carrying over the question which was asked basically. So there is another question. How can we neurobiologically explain why some people with extreme childhood stress become strong and resilient personalities, while some with little or mild stress have mental illness or personality disorders? What the same molecular mechanisms, or is it something else?
First, we have to understand that childhood sexual abuse or childhood trauma itself has a cognitive bias. Cognitive bias means, let's say I am a person who is genetically wired to be very much emotionally, and I would be emotionally disturbed very easily. Now I face a childhood incident which might not be very severe, but for me it is very severe, and each time I recollect it, my brain's imperfect memory, our memory is very imperfect. We add a lot various things when we repeatedly recall our memory. Anyway, on repeated recollection, I go on adding various things to those incidents, and ultimately, when I narrate that incident to someone, I am making literally a hill out of a molehill. Now, in most childhood sexual abuse and its narrative that goes on in chamber of a psychologist, these things happen. Those whom we call borderline personality, they have this trait in their brain. Their brain gets emotionally disturbed very easily, and those emotionally disturbed brain keeps on adding various memory colors to their original memory, and ultimately it becomes a chemistry. So those persons who are saying they have huge childhood trauma, they may not have the childhood trauma, and actually what has happened is might be something else. So their brain was not that much damaged at that moment. Number one. Number two, childhood trauma is equal to all psychiatric disease. This is oversimplification. This is Freudian oversimplification. He is actually mostly made this up, because you have to understand that there are a lot of things that determine whether a person will develop pathological cerebral trait or not. I am actually deliberately saying pathological cerebral trait because these traits are lifelong. But sometimes they are pathological, sometimes they are physiological. When a person develops pathological cerebral trait, there would be a genetic background. There would be a inherited genetic background, a de novo genetic background. When a person was developing from zygote in the mother's womb, there might have been some genetic mutation which is in de novo mutation load, and there would be inherited mutation load. These two would say how much the person would be able to handle that childhood sexual abuse or not. If this is wrong, this has some weakness in it. If this part has vulnerability, then only childhood sexual abuse can be associated with later development of disorder. So we psychiatrists ourselves suffer from a cognitive bias and selection bias. We always see patients who describe to us that we have developed we have faced childhood sexual abuse, and now we are developing the psychiatric symptoms. So in our brain's learning process, it has been ingrained that childhood sexual trauma or childhood abuse is equal to psychiatric disease. No. If we see at large population, there was a data. If someone remembers the exact figure, please correct me because I might be wrong. There was a data in America and some Scandinavian country where they have done a population-based study on childhood abuse, and they have found out that almost 50% or more of boys and almost 70% or more of girls have had childhood sexual abuse or other abuse in their life. But a large majority of them are normal because they don't have the genetic background. In India too, there was one study. I forgot that completely the percentage. Obviously, girls' percentage was more, boys' percentage was less, but there too, the percentage was substantial. A substantial number of Indian boys and girls have admitted that they have faced close family environment abuse, but most of them are not.
Yeah, thank you. Bhaskar, Dr. Ashutosh Shah has asked a similar question. I think you have partly answered it also. Environmental stressors are not responsible for stress. That is, nurture does not play a role in adults. Only inherent brain structure and function, that is the nature, determines the experience of stress. Of course, in critical neurodevelopmental period, in utero, in early childhood, nurture would have a impact. Kindly confirm this understanding. Thank you.
Yes.
So you mean to say that since everyone is differently wired,
Yes.
so they are reacting differently.
Exactly.
Alim,
Yeah.
हम लोग भास्कर मतलब should we take more questions or Bhaskar, are you ready for more questions?
Yes, no problem. अभी तो खा के सो जाना है. सुबह से पेशेंट देख लिया, अभी खाना बन रहा है.
There are some questions. You know, Subhangi madam has given you a suggestion. Keep background of slides white and color of letters black. So,
Yes.
Gautam da, please unmute yourself if you want. You know, we like this smiling you.
Hello,
Hello.
because you know that like Amrit and Alim, Bhaskar is also my younger brother. So I'm biased to him sometimes. And not only that, I'm really listen. It is great to listen to him, but I am not fully concentrated because I am still in clinic. But definitely Bhaskar is the asset of Indian Psychiatric Society. Whenever he delivers lecture, it is definitely for especially all the psychiatrists and especially for the youngster and the PGs. It is really great. Thank you, Bhaskar. Please keep rocking.
Thank you for the high praise.
क्या हो रहा है?
Bhaskar, there is a question: how cognitive reappraisal will help in building resilience, by Dr. Shubhangi ma'am.
Cognitive reappraisal could build resilience again only if the soil is ready, means the genetic background is conductive and the person has the capacity, genetic capacity to learn. If there is no genetic capacity to learn, there is no cognitive appraisal would ever build resilience. But if in suitable patient who has the right genetic condition, yes, it can increase resilience, but the resilience would not be hugely developed. If I have impaired resilience, we can make it less impaired, but we can never make it completely normal like others.
There's a question, and Susmita madam has been asking again and again to ask you this question, though you have answered it in a different manner. How emotional value of stress affects resilience?
Susmita, please unmute yourself and ask this question directly.
If she can raise the hand, we can unmute him because everyone cannot unmute.
Yes,
Yes.
Please unmute. Dr. Susmita, please unmute.
Yes, unmuted.
Sir, I'm asking the thing ki, we have, I know this is rubbish ki we have this this is the severity of stress. These are list of stress that can cause this. But in your pathway of resilience and all these things, we I didn't find anything how it is related to emotional pathway. Emotional function is another function of brain. If any close one if any stress that is having different emotional value to me, so how my resilience system will act, and in the mechanism you described about inflammatory and all this mechanism, but how this emotional function affect this thing, I just want to ask, sir.
Yes. You want to ask that what is emotion to brain? Is it
Yeah, sir.
what is it an expression function of brain, or it is itself a stress function of brain, right?
Yes, sir. Partly that, and other thing like how this emotional value affect this resilience to stress, how will cope up and all these things.
Exactly. What that, pardon people because I am slightly going deeper. You may not like that, I might be delaying you, but I need to go a little deep to answer this question. Human beings work by the principle of goal-directed decision-making system. Means, let's say I am giving myself an example. Now I am talking with a group of people about my favorite subject in the world, brain and psychiatry. And I am also hungry. I am seeing children from 9 people, and I haven't eaten much. So my goal is to satiate my hunger, and second goal is to maintain my pleasure that I am getting from this discussion. So these are the two goals I have to achieve, and preferably with a single or limited mode of action, because brain doesn't like to waste energy in other. So what are the work options I have? Number one, I can mute this meeting and go to the dining room. They are making wonderful food, and I might get some food. This is one action, but this action has less emotional value to me because I am losing my pleasure of talking to you. Then this is number one course of action. Number two course of action is I can continue this lecture and I might delay my food for 30 minutes or other things. this course of action has more emotional value to me because this would let me gain my pleasure. So I am deferring my first goal in response to my second goal. And then I am staying here and talking to you. So this is the action I am choosing. First step, I found what are the goals that I need to achieve. Then, based on my emotional reaction, based on my various other kind of reaction, I am choosing what goal I should pursue. Then I am pursuing that goal. If let's say I was hungry for 10 days and this option came to me, my action would have been I would have chosen food fast. So depending on various available circumstances and body states, my action will change. This is, and after doing this work action, I am learning that this is not making me uncomfortable. This is giving me my pleasure, and I can better take the food. So this is the whole goal-directed decision making that I went through. And here, emotion is giving me the value of choosing any action. So one thing which causes emotional reaction to me would have more value to me, right? So this is what emotion for brain is. It is a tool, number one. Number two, emotion is also a information for brain, and like every other information, brain has to manage this information load. So whenever a person gets more and more emotional, the brain's information carrying system has to carry more information, and that would cause inflammation. So when you are in severe anger or severe grief or severe happiness or severe joy, there would be inflammation in your brain. Inflammation itself becomes a substrate for brain stress response system. And thirdly, emotion is an output of brain. So emotion has three kind of action in brain. Now, what was your second question? I forgot during this answer. So please ask me the second question. Unmute yourself. I already forgot the second question.
So second question was how this emotional value affect the resilience system, the pathway of resilience and other thing. You described the pathway, but here like it's basically the general mechanism, neural inflammation and all.
And I have not included emotional reaction to it because that would make this more complex. I was trying to give a basic tone down option. If we include
I think we can discuss this one on live CME because it will get too complicated for everyone. I want to take this question from Dr. Muktesh. After hearing your deliberation, is this approach too nihilistic, like Charles Dickens' selfish gene? So let me answer. Bhaskar, first let me answer. Dr. Muktesh, I had this answer from one of the most senior psychiatrists, Dr. A.K. Agrawal from Lucknow. He told that most of the patients get well not because of you, but despite of you. They are getting better because of themselves. You are just a helping hand there. So do not think yourself to be God. Everyone is, what Bhaskar is saying, what I am gathering, those who are primed to get better will get better. Those who are not primed to get better, they will remain the treatment resistance, the so-called treatment resistance. Is it so, Bhaskar? जिसको ठीक होना है वो ठीक होता है.
बहुत simplistic होगा. There is nothing meaningless. If we talk about a person, let's say, forget brain, forget everything. Let's talk about heart. A heart is affected by cardiomyopathy. So the cardiomyopathy would have its own genetic code, would have its own genetic determinants, And once there is all the genetic parameters needed for a particular outcome, that particular outcome will happen. At present, we don't have much support system or much medication to change that outcome. We can delay that outcome, but we cannot change that outcome. Similarly, in brain too, if brain is genetically poised enough to develop psychosis at young age, then psychosis would develop. That psychosis might be delayed for a few years, but we can never omit it. That doesn't become nihilistic. Science is not nihilistic. It just says this thing would happen. These are the possible matters we can do. These are the possible measures we can take which would prolong this life decision or not. But there is no nihilism in it. Nihilism means nothing can be done. No, nothing can be done is not there. There are measures. But we don't have the fully corrective measures. It has given very interesting argument. Psychosocial stressor and medical stressor comparison. No psychosocial stressor is strong enough to damage a brain beyond repair that some residue would remain. A traumatic brain injury would insult a brain and leave a sign, but that sign, if given a younger brain, can fully recover. Diabetic ketoacidosis would damage a brain, but in a 70-year-old, that damage might be permanent. In a 30 years old, or 20 years old, or 10-year-old, that damage would be reversed. Same is true for all these stressors. And psychosocial stressor, how severe can it be? Only example would have been if you are a strict vegan, you are a vegan, you are stranded in a plane crash and you have to eat your co-passenger to survive. Now, that is a stressor that might stay for a few, let's say, a few years or more. But ultimately, these would not be permanent, because unless and until your brain has completely lost its ability to regenerate, no stressor and its sign can remain. Brain would always over a new layer of sensory information, emotional information, and other information on it. Time heals is a colloquial word, but it has scientific validity in it.
Amrit, I think we should.
We'll call it a day. We'll give the chair. And the boss is, looking at the. Over to the chairpersons, I think.
Chairpersons for the comment.
Bhaskar will go on and on. It's in his home turf now. He will only hit sixes.
चलो बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन आए हैं, मैं एक काम कर रहा हूँ, मेरा मोबाइल नंबर छोड़ के जा रहा हूँ.
We will put forward these questions to you.
Yes, sir. So it was a fantastic presentation by Dr. Mukherjee, sir. You ignited 200 plus minds. So we are started thinking about actually you talked about evolution of the brain, the homeostasis mechanism in monocellular and multicellular organisms, how synaptogenesis occurs, then the neuroplasticity, whenever it occurs, it keeps changing. And that point which you have given us, any childhood trauma, it may make the person, that brain to either change completely or have some deficits also. Definitely that neuroplasticity will lead into the multiple factors, especially in this resilience system. The genetic factors could be epigenetic phenomena or some immunomodular this thing, different developmental or psychological or neurochemical factors which are essential, which will contribute to the development of the resilience, as well as which will in turn lead into the many neuropsychiatric disorders. It could be a physical stressor, it could be a psychological stressor, or trauma, whatever the word you use, the brain to develop into the different and also you also pointed out that in your next series you'll be talking more about the actual pathophysiology in each neuropsychiatric disorders, the how it neurobiology takes place. Thank you for wonderful presentation, sir. And I thank Dr. Alim sir, Dr. Dr. Amrit and Dr. Tufan Pati sir for giving me this opportunity. And I was too young in this subject to chair Dr. Bhaskar Mukherjee. Over to my senior sir, Dr. Sandeep Goyalji.
Thank you, Dr. Somshekhar. Thank you, Bhaskar, for a wonderful CME. Started from homeostasis and build up slowly so that we can understand. And rather than comments, this lecture has generated many queries in me. And my first question is, you can answer in next lecture. My first query is, what are the clinical implications of understanding resilience? Can in future a drug be developed which acts on the pathway of the resilience? And are there any identified genes related to resilience? I could find only one, neuropeptide Y, but there must be many more. And most important query I have is how genes affect the resilience. We discussed mainly about the pathway and mechanism of the resilience, but how the genetic mechanism affects the resilience. These are the questions I would like to.
First question will be answered itself in second presentation, because second presentation goes around how physiological changes occur due to disturbances in resiliences. So I'm not answering first question because that would defeat the second. Now all the antidepressants are resilience. So-called antidepressant we use every day are actually drugs which build resilience. These are the drugs which builds whole body's resilience, not only brain resilience. If you search, you find out these are the drugs which can prevent malignancy, which can prevent early death, which can prolong. So this is done by increasing resilience. Number 3, genes affecting resilience. What you have read is just one gene. 20,000 genes we have, each of them in their own way increases resilience. So there is no specific one gene of resilience. That idea which neuroscientists of few years ago had is done. There is no single gene of resilience. 20,000 genes of body, each of them has their role in resilience. Cancer is one of the mechanisms of failure of body's resilience to neoplastic stress.
Yes.
If we think that way. Anyway, and you have another question which I actually forgot. Your second question. What was the second question? You have another question. I answered 3 of them. You asked 4 questions. So I missed one of them.
I asked. Thank you, Dr. Bhaskar, for a wonderful lecture, and over to the organizers.
Tufan sir.
Thank you, Bhaskar. A lot of compliments to you for such an enlightening lecture. I had a lot of worries, a lot of things came to my mind, but I went off the screen because I am having active COVID now also. And I think most of our queries will be answered in the next session. When this resilience is surpassed, what are its clinical implications? That will be more interesting. And maybe we may invite Bhaskar for a third session where we will be giving him the set of questions that is being posted in the chat box. हम उसको भेज देंगे and he will get prepared with the answers. I think we should plan like this. It has been excellent, highly rewarding, highly enlightening, and thank you very much. Around 300 participants we have. I am very much obliged to all of them who have taken their pain in this evening to be here with us. Thank you, Bhaskar, and over to Amrit for conclusion.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Actually, it was the biggest catch of Thursday musings. It's like Mamata Banerjee coming to BJP.
Just a minute, I noted our immediate past president Gautam Shah. Welcome, Gautam.
Yes, already given his talk. So we finally.
Thank you, Dada. Hats off you. Amrit and Alim, you are doing fantastic. In fact, it is the best one. Best webinar so far in our country I have seen. And actually, if you see, it is really great, whatever you have done. And Bhaskar is superb today. Thank you, Bhaskar. Keep rocking like this. And I am so happy, so proud of my younger brothers and also my Dada, Dr. Tufan Puti, who is behind the screen, always active in academic purpose. I'm really great, Dada. Please keep there. We need you for Indian Psychiatric Society and Psychiatric Fraternity for in a bigger way. Thank you, Dada. Thank you.
So, you're the biggest catch for Thursday musings, I think. So, Bhaskar, thank you for finally coming. We had lots of fights, all friendly fights. That's why when a question came about sociology, psychology school, I thought it is Amrit and Alim school of thought. Both this. He's the typical politician. He goes wherever the wind is blowing. So thank you to our chairpersons, Sandeep Bose, sir. You're wonderful. A lot of questions, lot of difficult questions, and some people were overwhelmed by the information Bhaskar was throwing at them. So finally, we had to put a red signal. We will have more sessions, and we had a super duper house today again, more than 300 participants. And that's real. That speaks a lot. That's the integration of biology, sociology, and psychology. Bhaskar cannot run away from sociology and psychology because that to bring people herein to he knocks on the other's head. That is what is psychology actually. He knocks, and he tells no, psychology is not right. I like his style actually. He eats chana and tells chana is not good for health. So that's our Bhaskar. We love him. We love him so much. So thank you to the audience. We'll have another session next week. It will be a little more, disorder based. That's what Bhaskar has promised us.
Yes.
The last question, Bhaskar. You might hate this question. Somebody asks drug of choice for improving resilience.
Yes.
Drug of
choice.
Resilience.
Channa.
Drug of choice.
Good night.
Any
Okay.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, Torrent. Thank you to our IPS Odisha State Bank. Thank you, Alim. Thank you, Tofan sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Dada wants to say something.
Good night. Yeah.
Agam Choice is good girlfriend.
गौतम दादा भाभी को बोल देता हूँ मैं.
Good night.
Good night to everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Sombai.
Thank you, bhai. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I think we can
Close the meeting
log
now.
out now. Close the meeting now.
Yes.
So good night, everybody. Great
Good
session.
night, sir. Good night.
Yeah.
Mr. Chintan, you can close the meeting.
Sanket, please close the meeting now.